Well, hey, you guys clicked on the video, so you already know what you're getting into. So excited to teach you guys about this new game where you're going to be playing Leonardo DiCaprio. You've just been injured by a bear and you are trying to use the Earth's surroundings to survive as you are trying to escape that bear. And you might even need to live inside a horse for a couple of days. This is kind of a survival type game. Really excited to show you guys some of the more deeper mechanics. Obviously, I'm just joking. No, we are talking about Revenant by Mindclash. And if you guys don't know, they are the ones that released Voidfall, which was one of my top games of the year it was released. And because of that, of course, I am interested in Revenant because this is actually a prequel to Voidfall. I'm so excited that I get to cover this because I'm actually a huge fan of the Voidfall universe. I also was a huge fan of Voidfall, and I'm not going to show you, it's way up there and it's a huge box, but I actually did do a little segment where I actually talked in pretty good detail about what Voidfall is in my top games of the year video of 2023. So I'll go ahead and link that above and then also down below in the description so that you can check that out and just watch that Voidfall section if you are interested. But knowledge of Voidfall, you do not need any of that in order to play Revenant. These are very different games. And also keep in mind that these are going to be prototype components, so everything is subject to change. But what exactly is Revenant? It is a game set in the Voidfall universe that is a worker placement game where the ships that you are actually moving on, which are the worker placement spots, are actually going to be either shifting around the board. They're also going to be getting removed potentially or being built throughout the game. And the whole game is about shifting allegiances with the different houses in the universe. There are going to be all of these different houses that players are going to have secret objectives for. They're also going to have hidden house influence cards that are going to be calculated at the end of the game. Every player is going to be pushing up those influence tracks in all these different ways throughout the game, the main way being placing on a worker placement spot that is associated with that given house. You're going to be playing through 4 rounds, each round consisting with 5 different phases, which we are going to be talking about now. The Sonar phase will be resolved if a player sets the Revenant to hyper jump the previous round, so it's not even applicable in the first round of the game. But what this does allow you to do is it allows you to reset the map, so to speak, by jumping to a different area on the board, resetting its planets and its Voidborn ships. And if you don't set the Revenant to hyperjump, then the rifts around the board are going to actually spawn more Voidborn ships, and it can get out of hand pretty quickly. The action phase is where most of the gameplay will actually happen. Players are going to each be placing crew figures onto empty ship spaces. You're always going to bump up on the influence track of a house linked to the ship that you win on. So for example, I place my crew member on this Novarchon arc ship, and by doing so, I will go up 1 space on the Novarchon influence track. Now, if you sent your crew to the Revenant or to an arc ship, they will actually have a unique action or ability associated that you can use. But there are also several smaller ships that you can place your crew on, being fighters, dropships, and even your own player frigate. If you placed your crew on a small ship, you can actually move it to an adjacent sector before or after using its action. The fighters are going to allow you to destroy Voidborn ships and move up the tactics track, which gives material and other benefits. And the dropships can actually land on a planet and use the action associated with that planet. Your player frigate can act as a dropship or a fighter, so it's a bit more flexible. Also, you get to draw hidden influence cards when you use your own frigate. I kind of forgot to mention that, sorry. Okay, now back to bigger ships. These are going to get their own chapter because there are a lot of abilities, so I'm going to call it chapter II.a or something. And yes, we're getting there, but first, once you are done with your main action, you can actually use a bonus action on your player board. This can include removing corruption from your board, gaining a resource of your choice, going up the tactics track, maybe playing an improvement card, moving your frigate, or activating an ability with an activate icon. The Revenant is where a player can choose fueling up for a hyperjump and decide which area to jump to, or deploy a ship from the supply to the map. And this can be any ship, so arc ship, fighter, dropship, and even civilian ships. When you do this, you're going to increase the power of the associated house, which is just more victory points for the players going up that track at the end of the game. House Belleton is one of my favorite houses in Voidfall from a visual perspective, so I naturally find myself at their arc ships during the game. They're going to allow you to spend either 2 energy to gain any 4 resources, or alternatively, you can draw 2 improvement cards and discard a corruption off of your board. More on corruption later. House Dunlork allows you to add 2 absorbers to the board, gaining an energy for each, and these are essentially shields for whenever the Voidborn attack. Alternatively, you can gain 2 science. House Fenrax allows you to move up to 3 small ships to an adjacent sector or gain 2 neutronium. House Novarchon allows you to play up to 2 improvement cards from your hand, and you get to spend 1 fewer resource for each. Or you can spend 3 science in order to level up your captain. Gameplay-wise, House Shivius is one of my all-time faves in Voidfall, so knowing what they become is just some fun knowledge that I get to have as a total nerd for the lore of this world. But the first action they can take is going to be able to go up the tactics track 3 times, or alternatively they can destroy 2 Voidborn ships anywhere on the map. House Yarvik allows you to repair ships by spending material, and for each repair that you make, you get to go up that tactics track. Or alternatively, you can gain 2 materials. House Xenar only has 1 action option, but it is super cool and very helpful in a tight worker placement game like this. It allows you to discard an improvement card to use the action of an already occupied ship on the board. Now, after all players have played their 3rd crew member, the action phase ends and the recall phase begins. Players are going to be taking back all of their crew off the board, and whoever the leader is in the tactics track gets to choose who the start player is for the next round of the game. The breach phase is where all of the Voidborn are actually going to attack. They are going to each deal damage, and the only things that will stop that damage from getting through is going to be those absorber tokens that players might have placed. Interesting thing of note here though, the player whose frigate is closest to the sector when the damage is being dealt gets to decide where that damage goes. So this is a way that you can actually protect those house ships you have a lot of stock in, or maybe destroy a house ship that you know an opponent is gunning for. The hyperjump phase is the last phase in the round, and if a player activated the hyperdrive on the Revenant, this is where you will be cleaning up the board and resetting it based on the Sonar card that is face up. Also, the tactics track will get reset as well at this point. Now you will be playing 4 rounds of this, and after that final hyperjump phase, the game will end and victory points are going to be calculated. Most of those points are going to be gained from the influence track. This is when the power of those houses matters quite a bit. If House Belleton is at 1 power and I have 6 influence with them, I get 6 points. But if they had had 3 power and I had had 6 influence, I would gain 18 points. You multiply your influence with each house in relation to their current power. Improvement cards, corruption, and your captains are 3 concepts I've mentioned but haven't really talked about. The improvement cards come in 3 types. Training cards are abilities that you can add to your crew members, giving them special powers throughout the game. There are also slots on your player board that you can add equipment improvements, making your empire even more unique. And lastly, support cards, which are just one-offs and typically are pretty powerful. Corruption was in Voidfall as well, and it works mostly the same way here. It's basically really bad. Ships can actually gain corruption in the breach phase, and whenever you send a crew member to a corrupted ship, you gain a corruption on your actual player board, locking you from using that for storage, for resources, and also it locks out that bonus action as well. You also are going to be losing 2 victory points for every corruption still on your player board at the end of the game. And finally, Your captains. One of your crew members is the captain. These are each unique to start off. They also have special abilities that apply at different times throughout the game based on your player board, and raising their level just makes them more and more powerful and gain full potential of their asymmetry. Okay, so I've explained kind of how the game flow works. I've explained all of the concepts of the game. And honestly, if you haven't played it, you might get the idea that this is just a cool dressed up worker placement game. But I want to reiterate, the feeling of not knowing when a worker placement spot is going to be removed or not is actually huge. It's a very, very interesting. It's a different kind of game because I'm feeling competitive in the way that I want to make sure that my opponent's houses that they want to gain power are destroyed. I also am afraid that maybe me and my opponent are also going for the same house. We want the same house to get a lot of power. That's also a very, very different vibe. I love the fact that with good positioning of your player frigate, you can actually control where that damage goes, and you can be the one to destroy the house ships or choose to save your house ship. Oftentimes you're going to be going on multiple tracks, so you're actually going to be pushing and vying for multiple house influence. Every player is going to be scoring for all the different influence that they've gained. It's just the varying amounts that you're going to score based on the power is what matters. The game is really in going to the right places at the right times, just like a worker placement game, but also being able to manage those hidden objectives, also the hidden influence cards that you've calculated and gained throughout the game. Also, some classes like the politician are actually it's more important for them to have more of those hidden influence cards. So there's also a little bit of asymmetry there. But yeah, being able to manage that is very, very fun. And also being able to manage not getting access to spaces. Like if a certain ship that provides a resource is destroyed early game, it can get really tough to gain that resource quickly without just using a bonus action at the end of each round to gain those resources back. These kinds of things are the things that you're going to feel and realize in Revenant as you play. You can probably hear from my enthusiasm that I am a huge fan of this game. Even at its current stage, I can already see this game being a absolute wonderful intro to the Voidfall universe, which I want to get more and more people into Voidfall. So this being like, hey, I see, right now we're running away from the Voidborn, trying to get this cure to the Voidborn away, kind of like Rogue One style. But when we're all done and I say, hey, do you guys want to play like as the actual houses themselves instead of being kind of these behind the scenes, pulling levers, gaining influence with these houses? Well, that is where Voidfall can come in. So I do think that it's awesome that it can be put as a thematic jumping point to Voidfall, but I also love that this game is much easier to get into, much easier to teach. Yeah, so that is Revenant. I hope that this gave you a good idea of how this game operates, how it works, gave you a good idea of the visuals and, some of the charm that it has to it. And if this video helped you, would love it if you would drop a like on this video and consider subscribing if you want to see more content like this. But hey, go ahead and drop down your favorite board game set in a sci-fi universe. I would love to hear from you down there. That is it for the video, my friends. Let's go ahead and drop the beat.